Let's just say a quick hi to everybody. I'm just getting some feedback. All right,
Okay.
guys, if you hear an echo, just let me know. Um, okay, so basically, today's class is class 22, and we're going to be dealing with the preparations for Shabbos, right? How to prepare for Shabbos, and in general, how to prepare ourselves for spirituality. Okay, so I want to start off with the story. I think I maybe have told it before, but I've got a white beard now, so I can repeat myself. Right?
I know some of your stories.
So there's a
All
famous
right.
story. It goes like this: there was a guy who stayed in a village somewhere where he couldn't make a living. So he tried everything he did, one business after another, and whatever he did, everything failed. Nothing really worked out for him. So he decided one day, a friend of his told him that if he goes to a particular island, there's a place where there's loads of gold, diamonds, it's in abundance. You can literally pick it up off the streets and go there. You can just fill your pockets. You'll come back a multimillionaire. Well, go there and you'll spend a couple of weeks there, collect stuff for yourself, and that will be you'll make a fortune. So the guy heads off there, right? And it's a long journey away. It's to take a ship there to get there, and he gets to this island in the middle of nowhere, and he sees it's true. Right? He looks at the street, and there's literally gold coins lying on the floor, diamonds everywhere. And he starts like picking it up. He just starts filling his pockets like frantically, like doing more and more and more. And everyone looks at him like you're crazy. Like, why are you doing that? Like he says, like, guys, why aren't you grabbing this? There's gold and diamonds everywhere. And everyone looks at him like he's crazy. Doesn't get what's going on. So later that night, right, he wants to find a place to sleep, and he goes into a hotel. And the hotel, right, where he checks into, they said to him, "How are you paying for your room?" So he reaches into his pocket, he takes out a couple of gold coins, and he says, "Yeah, here we go." And
Hello.
to his sister, we don't take this. This
Hi,
is
everybody.
hello, Lisa. But so he says, right, we don't take gold coins over here. This is worthless, right? So he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Over here where we stay, our currency is fish fat, right? We use fish fat, and it costs, two teaspoons of fish fat, and that's what you have to pay." So the guy thinks to himself, "Fish fat? That's crazy. Why would anyone want fish fat?" He says, that's what we use. That's our currency. So he goes and he gets goes to one of the people that's in the hotel, and he says to them, "Do you by any chance have any fish fat?" And the guy says, "I've got a little here." So he gives him 2 teaspoons of fish fat. He checks into the room, and the next day he wakes up. He's puzzled. He doesn't get what's going on. He said, "The currency is fish fat. What's going on?" So he decides to speak to a few people in the town to see what's it all about. And someone there is nice enough to explain to him. He says, "Over here, that the currency which we use is fish fat. Right? That's our currency. Everything is bought and sold in fish fat. And the way to become rich, you got to whoever's got the most fish fat. That's how you can buy and sell stuff." So the man goes and he looks at ways and businesses of how he can earn some fish fat. So he decides he's going to start, he's going to get a little fishing net, a little boat, and he goes out and he starts fishing. And he makes for himself every week, like 2 or 3 tablespoons of fish fat. And he makes a little living with that. He starts buying, manages to buy a second boat after a couple of weeks, and then a third boat. And before long, right, he's got himself at the ship, and every day he's going out, he's collecting, pounds and pounds and pounds of fish fat, and he's starting becoming somebody in that city. Right? And during that time, he completely forgets about the gold and the diamonds and the silver on the floor, and he's just collecting fish fat, and he's collecting more and more and more and more. And he slowly, over a month goes by, then 2 months and 3 months, after 6 months of being in this island, right, he's built for himself almost an empire. He's got a fleet of ships, hundreds of workers, people going out, and he's collecting fish fat by the tons, right? And he's got loads and loads and loads of fish fat. He becomes one of the wealthiest people around on the island. And he realizes why he came there. He came there to make a lot of wealth, and now that he's become successful, he decides, no, it's time to go back home and to go meet his family and to show them the amazing fortune that he's made. And so he heads back home, right? He fills up one of his biggest ships with containers and containers full of fish fat, and he heads back. He heads back home, right? And his wife's there to greet him with his family, and he says, "Honey, you won't believe it. We've hit it big. I've made it big time, right? I became a multi millionaire." So he says, "Oh, really? What's inside?" He says, "In this container, in this ship, right? We're gonna have enough a fortune that we're gonna live with a lifetime." And the wife's so excited. He says, "What did you get? What's going on?" And he opens up the container, right? And the biggest stench comes out, right? And it's just full of fish fat. Just starts rolling out by the ton, right, all over the show. And he says to his wife, "Can you see? Look how much fish fat I've got. Look how much, look how wealthy we are." Right? And his wife said, "Fish fat? What are you doing? Right? Look what we're going to do with fish fat. Right? It's disgusting. It's rotten." And he suddenly realizes that he forgot the main purpose of what he was there for, and all the gold and diamonds which were around in abundance around next to him, he forgot to bring home. And in his pocket, all he had left was the couple of gold coins which he collected on the first 2 or 3 days that he was there. Now, the sages say that this is an example of how we enter this world and how we are kind of tricked or fooled by what the purpose of is in this world. Right? We come into this world, right, and we are given opportunity, right, to do many mitzvahs, many good deeds, many commandments, to study a lot of Torah, and we get to this world, but somehow we get caught up and we start collecting the wrong currency. Right? We start going after, dollars and other currencies, and we start trying to accumulate wealth and wealth and wealth, and more wealth and more wealth, and that's what we're chasing. And after 120, a person dies, and he gets to to heaven, and he opens up his containers, right, full of fish fat, and he realizes that he collected the wrong currency, right? That this isn't the currency which we use, right, in the real world, in the world of God, in the world of Hashem, right? The good deeds is really what's come, and it's in abundance, right? The opportunity to collect good deeds is numerous. There's so many good deeds which are lying around, so many good opportunities to do good things for people and to do good deeds in general, that it's all over the show, but we don't realize and appreciate how much abundance we have. And instead, we start collecting the fish fat, and we only realize sometimes when it's too late, what it's all about. So I wanted to start with, when it comes to Shabbos, right, to understand what it really means to have a spiritual light and how to appreciate the opportunity of holiness and of spirituality in general, and what we can do to try and maximize our own potential, and how we can actually fill ourselves. Preparing for Shabbos is more than just preparing for a day of the week. It's about preparing ourselves to be a vessel for holiness. So I want to show you a little demonstration. Okay, so I have over here, right, a whiskey tumbler. Okay, now this particular whiskey tumbler, right, it can hold, I think, about 250 milliliters. Right, that's about what's it, eight fluid ounces. Right, for those who are in America, and the cost of this is about $34. Okay, so it can hold about so much. This is one vessel. Now, I have over here another vessel. This is a handmade crystal lead decanter, right? It's a Baccarat decanter, and this price of this is about 600 euro, or about $700. Okay, it holds inside of it, right, approximately what's it, about three? I'll tell you the amount. It's about 1/4 gallon. Right? That's how much weight. That's how much volume it can hold. Now it's very, very delicate and very, very, very fragile. Now over here I have a different vessel, right? And this vessel is an empty water bottle, right? And this can hold 5 liters or 1.5 gallons, and it's empty. It's essentially, this is, it's basically trash. It's garbage, right? I'm going to be throwing it out soon, right? Now these are the three different vessels that I want to talk about. Now, if I had to ask you, if I had to give away a prize and ask you, which vessel would you be most interested in having, right? Which one is the most precious? So what would many of you say? Right? So you'll say, no, the glass is really good, no, solid, right? The decanter maybe even better. It's got the highest price. And the last one, right? The water bottle is like a piece of trash. You wouldn't want that at all, right? And that's not something that you would look at. Now, if I told you that we're planning on going on a journey into the desert, right, and we are going to be taking a hike up a steep mountain, right, in a very hot desert, now it's going to suddenly change the picture of the value of the vessel. Suddenly, you're not going to be looking at this container, right? This particular glass, if I had a glass like this in the desert, it will help me maybe for about an hour or so to give me just enough water to maybe not dehydrate for an hour. Now, if I took the decanter, right, and I had to take this into a desert, it would be absolutely useless, right? The first smash, right, even the lid is not really stable, right? It would fall and break, it could drop, and it wouldn't be very useful in the desert at all. However, right, if I took this bottle, right, which is durable and it's got a lid and it can come off and on, right, and I took this into the desert, this would actually be the most valuable thing to take with you, right, into the desert. Now that's basically what I want to explain to you is a matter of perspective and of how we can change our attitudes to focus on that which is really important. And when we think of these vessels is basically, call it a parable for the human being. Now, very often when we're looking at the outside, right, and if a person will think to themselves, you know, what kind of a vessel am I? How much can I contain? How much spiritual light can I contain within us? And if a person is surrounded by the wrong people, and he happens to be foolish enough to ask someone else, "How much am I worth?" and they see him as being some or her as being something like this, so they'll tell you to your face, "No, you're a useless piece of trash. You know, you're worth nothing." But in reality, right, which vessel is the most important? Which one contains and is capable of holding the most out of any of them, right? It's the biggest one, the most durable one. This is the one which can contain the most water, right? And in our analogy, it's the one which can contain the most spiritual light. Now, very often, right, we look at externalities and we see, right, that what is an external world and the real value, right, the person who is with, as Chazal tell us, whoever is greater than his friend, Yitzro Goidel Hemeno, that his Yetzer Hara is bigger than him as well. Now, very often we'll have people who are big containers, right? They're big vessels to receive big amounts of spiritual light, and they don't realize it. And everyone will look at them and tell them that they're trash, right? And in reality, it's the exact opposite. This is the one, right, that is worth the most. This is the one that has the most potential, and this is the one which is going to be able to be filled with the most spiritual energy. And that's really what a person is all about. A person, right, is a vessel, right? And the more space that you have inside of yourself to contain spirituality, so the greater of a human being you can be. And conversely, right, the person who is a big vessel, so a big vessel which is empty contains a lot of emptiness. And a small vessel which is empty can only feel a little bit of emptiness. So the greater you are as a vessel, if you don't fill up your vessel, you can feel the deepest, darkest depressions that can be felt, right? The bigger you have the vessel to contain light, so if it's not filled with light, so the opposite will be true, and you'll be able to feel the most amount of darkness. And that's essentially what the concept is all about Kabbalah's Shabbos. We call it receiving Shabbos, is not about just receiving, getting Shabbos. What it means to receive means to fill yourself up, to be able to be a container to receive the spiritual light of Shabbos. Okay, and a person who has the spiritual light of Shabbos, right, the person has spiritual energy, that is really what it's all about. And it's about the person knowing his own value, so that you know yourself, right? If someone says, you know, what kind of a vessel are you, that you don't need to, you know yourself that you have the potential to be filled with a lot of spirituality, right? And the world may look at you as a piece of trash, right? And they'll for sure, without a doubt, tell you so, right? But it's your job to recognize that your real value is not the outside container, but what's contained within. Your soul within and your spiritual potential within, that is really who you are, and that's really what makes you you. And a clever person will be able to look at a container and see, right? The person, not for just the outside, but what their value is, how much spirituality they can contain within. Right? And a person who can see the value of another human being, how much potential they have and how much spirituality they can contain, so then they're going to appreciate and respect such a person despite what they are on the outside. The outside's almost irrelevant and has absolutely no bearing. And that's kind of the story which, if we think about our fish fat story, right, that's really what it's about not getting distracted and forgetting about what we're really here to do. We're here to grow spiritually, and we're just in a transitory period, right, in this world as we pass through. But the real mission and the real job is for us to grow spiritually, right? And that essentially is what preparing for Shabbos is all about. Now, I want to discuss something which is a question which is often asked, and that is keeping Shabbos difficult? Right? Is it difficult to keep Shabbos? And it can be, yes. Okay, so I want to explain the two difficulties which people often face when it comes to preparing for Shabbos or keeping Shabbos. Okay, the first one is Shabbos can be a burden for you. Right? Sometimes a person can feel that Shabbos coming, it's a time of restrictions, a time where I can't do what I want to do, and you realize as you learn some of the things that there's certain things you don't know, you can't do, and Shabbos can feel like a very big burden. Now, for that, there's a very simple technique. If you feel that Shabbos is burdensome, there's a very, very simple technique. Right? And what's the technique which I suggest, and I use it myself, is a very interesting, maybe a counterintuitive thing, and that is that the more you know about Shabbos, the easier it is to fulfill, the easier it is to keep Shabbos. And the reason for that is by knowing the laws, by knowing what you can and can't do, so it becomes much easier. It's like having a map and having directions, right? You're trying to get to a new destination. You've never been there before. So if you know the way how to get there, and you know all the rules and all the steps to take, so then getting there is a pleasure. You can enjoy the ride, you can enjoy the journey. But if you don't know the laws and you haven't, and that's why we're going to be discussing and learning in more detail the laws of Shabbos, because the more of the laws you know, the more confident you'll feel and the more easier it will be. You'll know exactly what you can and can't do. And then keeping Shabbos becomes a very pleasurable thing, because not only are you ready for it, you know exactly where you're holding and what the idea behind it is, what you can do with it, and everything which is contained within Shabbos. So a person, right, I wrote in my book, right, that if a person sees Shabbos as an enemy, right, there could be nothing more tormenting than that, right? If Shabbos is something which you don't look forward to, so imagine being stuck in a room with your arch enemy, right? And for 24 hours, right? One of you is going to land up dead, right? One of you is going to defeat the other, right? It's going to be so hard and such a struggle to go through the whole day. You can't wait. When Shabbos going? When Shabbos going? I can't wait for Shabbos to go out. And if that's the attitude, so you have a very horrible Shabbos. And it doesn't have to be that way. So if Shabbos is a burden, so the first step to take in correcting that is to actually know the way and know how to practice it. And when you do that, it can be a lot more pleasant. Now, the second thing which can make keeping Shabbos difficult is what I call that Shabbos can be your friend. Now, Shabbos can be something that you do look forward to. Shabbos can be something which you appreciate and you're waiting for the whole week. However, when Shabbos comes, there's no room for you to keep it. There's no room inside yourself. Now, if we go back to our examples of the different containers, the different bottles and containers, if you think of yourself like that, is there space within you to contain Shabbos? Is there any room within inside yourself for Shabbos to be present? And that is a very important concept. And that is, are you emotionally available to have a relationship with Shabbos? Are you emotionally available to have a relationship with Hashem? Now, if on your mind, you're just continuously preoccupied with your worries and your stresses, and you're busy and busy with so many other things, so then it could be that in your heart, there's actually no time for anything, and you don't have a place in your heart for Shabbos to settle. There's no room, right, for Shabbos to settle. It's like inviting a guest over to stay at you, but you've got no place for them to stay, and you've got no time to spend with them, right? So the guest can come, but you aren't present to be there with them. Now, the suggestion for that, right, is to create space within yourself to allow Shabbos to settle. right? And we'll see that part of doing that is some of it is practical steps of things that you can do to calm your mind down and to actually allow the space for Shabbos to settle within you. And another part is general work which we can do throughout the week, and that is preparing yourself just to be a receptacle for spirituality. Right? So that a person can be, right, able to receive. Right? Hashem might want to give you a lot of spirituality, but if there's no room within you, right, to receive it, so it will just hit you and fall off. That you need to be able to be a vessel and to contain spirituality within you, to say that I want spirituality, I want to keep it within inside me, and I want to be able to appreciate it. So those are kind of two things which I want to try and focus a bit apart. Okay, all right, we back?
Hey, Rabbi, can you back up? Yeah, can you back up
Yeah,
just a little
all
bit?
right.
It was
Okay,
broke up.
sorry about that. Okay, so there's a story. It goes like this. It's a true story. It happened in one of the concentration camps during the Second World War. So there was a Jewish man who had been kind of through the hardships of the concentration camps, you can imagine. And he was standing one day at a lineup. Now every day in the morning, I think at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, they would call every prisoner had to be out on time, right? And they would wear their tattered clothing, often barefoot, standing in the snow, and they would have a roll call, and they'll call each person out by name and by that, or by number actually, and they'll go and they'll count. Whoever was missing, whoever was slouching, would be taken off to be killed straight away. It was a very, very stressful time. Now, the one Nazi guard walks around, and he sees that there's a Jewish man who's standing in the lineup, and he's got a smile on his face, right? And he looks at him. His head at this stage is shaven bald, and he's emaciated, right? He looked that hardly looks recognizable from his former self. And the Nazi officer looks at him and he says to him, Moshe, I know you. And suddenly he recognizes and he sees this officer who's doing the roundup happened to be his neighbor, right, where he was in his hometown. And he said, why are you smiling? How can you possibly smile? He said, like, what do you mean? She said, I know what we've done to you, right? We took away you had a big business. We took away your business. We killed your family. We deported you. We killed every one of your relatives. You've been starving. You've been sick. You've got no hair. Your best friend's been killed. Right? You've got nothing. You're nothing left to live for. How in the world can you possibly have a smile on your face? What's there left to smile about? How can you even have a smile on your face? How can you do it? So Moshe says back to this Nazi officer, you're right, they've taken everything away from me. I'm left with absolutely nothing. I've got nothing left in my life. But there's one thing which you can never steal from me. There's something you can never take away. And what is that? It's my freedom to choose the right thing over the wrong thing. My free choice is something you can never get into my head. You can never steal my choice to do the right thing. Right? And might be different in different situations. Right? Today, my choice might be: do I push someone to get an extra slice of bread? Or do I try and escape? Do I try and survive another day? But this is my choice. My choice of free choice is something you can never steal. You can take away every one of my external things, but you can never touch my soul. You can never touch the things which are most important, and that is my mind, my right to choose, right, to be self-determinant. And that goes back to what we said earlier about looking at the vessel versus the container, right? The container and the content, sorry. And that is basically one can be stripped of all the externalities, and in the end, right, when a person after 120, all the externalities are taken away from you. What are you left with? You're left with the inner soul of who you really are as a person. Right, and that's what we're on this world to do, right, is to build and to have an inner core of a person, a personhood inside of us, which is there, and that's maintained. That can never be taken away from us, that can never be stolen, and that is really the essence of who we are. And the external container is almost irrelevant, right? What the external container looks like has no bearing on what goes inside. What goes inside is the real person. That's really what it's all about. And that's an idea which we should apply, right, for Shabbos, that Shabbos is a holy day, and when we absorb, as we spoke about last week, Shabbos, and we bring it into our lives, so we are filling ourselves and building that inner core character of who we are as a person, and it's those things which can never be taken away. It's those things which make us who we are as people. Now, there's an interesting thing, right, when it comes to preparing for Shabbos. So there's a famous expression, right, which they say, right, they say, failing to plan is planning to fail. Right, you may have heard that line before. Right, and that is that a person needs to plan. Right, you need to plan in advance for Shabbos, which means that the Talmud says a person who doesn't prepare before Shabbos, right? Since you can't cook on Shabbos, you won't have what to eat. You have to prepare before Shabbos. If you want something to eat on Shabbos, you need to come prepared. And we bring a similar example. We say, "Ha'olam hazeh doime leprosdor bifnei olam haba." This world is compared to a corridor before the world to come, which means now we have opportunity as living human beings to do good and to do good deeds. And now is the time to start preparing, right? If you go on vacation, for example, and you decide you're not going to pack, so don't expect to find a full suitcase when you get to the other side. Unless you pack that suitcase before your trip, you're not going to arrive and suddenly find a full suitcase on the other side. So whatever you packed inside your bag, that's what you're going to find with you on the other side. Okay, and that's what this world is about, and that's what Shabbos is about. Shabbos is kind of a preparation for us to realize that we need to start preparing spiritual vessels, and what we pack inside, that's what we're going to be left with on the other side. Right? And there's a very interesting thing. It's brought in Pirkei Avos. It says, Chazal tell us, it says, who's a wise person? Who's considered wise? It says, Eza Chacham, who's a Chacham? There's Haloimed Mikol Adam, someone who learns from every person. Now, there was a famous story of Rav Zusha of Animpo. Now, Rav Zusha of Animpo, he was a very, call it the charismatic and a very positive person. He always tried to find the good and the positive in every person that he came across. So one time there was a congregation where the people were really wayward, really rebellious, and they would eat,
Okay, you froze it with charismatic.
Okay, tell me when we're back. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. We back? Good. All right. Okay, so Rav Zusha of Anipo, so he was once called out to a community, and the rabbi said, "Can you please talk to this community? They're terrible people. They just couldn't care less about the Judaism. They couldn't care less about the laws. They're just rebellious and spiteful." And he goes and he sees, how bad can people really be? So he goes there for Yom Kippur service. Now, in Yom Kippur, it's a time when we're doing a teshuvah, we're repenting, and you have to fast the whole day, and it's a very spiritual day. And he comes to the synagogue and he sees that the people are sitting in the synagogue, and they're waiting for the rabbi to speak, and they're sitting there and they're eating, they're eating pork right in shul on Yom Kippur in front of the rabbi, in front of everyone. Right? And the rabbi looks at Rav Zusha and he says, "Can you see what kind of people I'm dealing with? Right? This is the crowd that I have to deal with. People just couldn't care less." And Rav Zusha starts off his speech and he says, "Children of Hashem, you're so great. You are so confident that Hashem's going to forgive you, that you're willing to sin and do the worst sins in public, and you're so confident in Hashem's mercy. So you're so blessed. You got such good faith and trust in Hashem that no matter what you do wrong, you know that Hashem's going to forgive you." So that's the kind of character that Rav Zusha was always looking for, the positive in people. So Rav Zusha once gave a speech and he said a very interesting thing. He said that there are 7 characteristics which we can learn from a robber, right? A thief, right? A person who steals, he does things in a certain way, and we can learn from him. Now, what are the 7 things that the robber does? So first of all, when a robber plans a robbery, right, he keeps it to himself. He doesn't go and publicize and tell the whole world, he's about to rob a bank. He's got these plans. He keeps all his plans and whatever he's doing, he keeps it private. He keeps it to himself. Now, with regards to keeping Shabbos, I can apply the same suggestion, and that is when you start keeping Shabbos, right? A suggestion which I have for you is keep it to yourself. Right? Why is that? Because very often, unfortunately, the majority of people will not be supportive, right? You're either going to find people that are either jealous that you are trying it and they aren't, or they're going to try and convince you that you're not able to do it, right? And when really you can, and in one way or another, they might persuade you. So keep, right? There's a certain trick that you have to do is if you're doing something, going for an accomplishment, right? Try and keep it private, right? And be careful with who you share it with, people that only that are going to encourage you. Okay, the second thing that a robber does is he's willing to take risks. Okay, so it takes a lot of guts, right, and a lot of courage, right? If you are going to rob a bank, you know, you're going to go do something like that. So you have to take risks. You might get caught. You might this go wrong. That can go wrong, right? You might get shot. You might get injured. But nevertheless, the robber goes through and he takes the risks which may come about through his actions. And again, we can apply this to Shabbos. Right? You sometimes have to take a little bit of a jump and a little bit of a risk and think to yourself, I may fail. I might not be able to keep the whole Shabbos and I might not know all the laws yet, but I'm going to try. Right? And that's part of that risk taking that needs to be present, that a person should try and be like the robber, be willing to risk it and give it a shot. Okay. The next thing that Robert does is he pays attention to the smallest of details. Now, right, when a person's planning a robbery, as you can imagine, right, every little detail counts. You need to know where are the security cameras, when are the guards on duty, what time, what sort of, how they're armed, you know, what sort of systems are in place, where's the getaway car going to be, how many minutes away is it from this place. Every little detail, right, is important. Now, for us, we can apply that for Shabbos as well. When it comes to Shabbos, every halacha, that is a lot of small, intricate laws, and these laws are important, right? And we must think like the way the robber thinks, that the little things are important, right? And even though it might seem trivial to us, but that's the mindset which we should have. Okay, the fourth thing that a robber does, he puts in a lot of effort, right? To go and pull off a bank robbery, to pull off a house or something like that, takes a lot of effort, right? A lot of planning, but a lot of effort as well in the execution of your plans. And that's something which we can learn from the robber, right? The robber puts in a lot of time and a lot of effort. He prepares and he goes through it and he rehearses and he makes sure that he gets everything right. And we can do the same thing when applying that to Shabbos, that we should put in a lot of effort. We should try our best and persevere and put in the effort which it takes, right? Not just to give up and to quit and say it's too hard for me, but to keep on going and to put in that same amount of effort. Okay, the fifth thing a robber does, he's quick. Okay, a robber doesn't waste time. Right, when he goes into a bank, he doesn't dawdle around and mess about. Right, he goes. He's got a purpose. He's got a plan. He goes in. He goes and executes his plan, and he gets in quickly and he gets out quickly. Now that's the same way what we call in Hebrew zrizus, quickness. Right, a person needs to act with tempo. Now, with pace, when you're going for a mitzvah, when you're doing something good, you need to be energetic about it. You need to be enthusiastic and not to be sluggish, but to be motivated. And that's a characteristic again that we can learn from the robber. Another thing, which is the sixth thing, is that a robber is confident and optimistic. I don't know if you ever thought about it, but a robber doesn't sit down and mope and say, oh, what if I get caught? No, this, no, I'm too lazy and I can go wrong and this. What's the robber thinking? The robber's pumped up with energy, he's sucked, right? And he's thinking to himself, I'm going to get it, I'm going to break in, I'm going to get this, I'm going to do that. And he's full of confidence and optimism. Right? And that, although he's doing something bad, but that negative, that quality is something which we can apply to ourselves, right? Not just for the keeping Shabbos, but in general, in life in general, to be continuously be confident and optimistic, even when things don't look so good, to say tomorrow can be better, I'm going to try harder, I'm going to keep on going, to persevere, right? And that's a trait that we can learn that the robber has. Right? And the last one, which I think maybe is maybe the most important, is that a robber, when he fails, right, he tries again. Right? A robber doesn't just give up. Right? A robber, right, if he doesn't make it the first time, he learns from his mistake and he tries again and again and again. And that's the same thing which we have to apply for Shabbos, right? And it applies to life. At work. Okay, I'm gonna cut out, so 1 second. Okay, if you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up. Good. All right. So the last one is, right, that a robber continuously, he tries again and again. Right? He doesn't just give up. If he fails, right, let's say you're doing something and let's say you try something for 30 days, and after 15 days, right? You get there and then you fail, right? So what do? Don't give up. You keep again. You start again, and next time you go for 16, right? And if you fail after, you go again. You try next time. You go for 17, and next time you go for 18. You make small little steps, and whenever you fail, failure is part of growth, right? And you ever been skating, right? And us, the trainers always say to you that the more times you fall when you're skating, right, the better of a skater you're going to be, because you learn from your mistakes. And that's one of the biggest ways in how we learn, is we actually learn from making mistakes more than anything else. So failing is a very big part of learning and a very big part of developing. So a person should never be afraid to fail. Failure is part of growth, right? And it's actually in society we're told that failure is bad, but in reality, the failure is the stepping stones to success. And so that's something we should always keep in mind. Now, just some practical tips of how we can prepare for Shabbos or what we can do. So it's brought in the Chaya Adam that a person should stop working on Friday afternoon. He should stop working from midday if possible. Okay, now it's not practical for everybody. That however much you can, a person should try on a Friday to try and end a little bit early, so that you don't rush into Shabbos, and you've got a little bit of time to settle yourself, to make the preparations which you need, and then you can go into Shabbos with a more of a clear head and some space and some energy to focus on the day of Shabbos. Now it's brought also in the Chaya Adam, a person should bath or shower right before Shabbos. You cut his hair, cut his nails, should change his clothes and have special clothes for Shabbos. You should prepare your house, make your house special, decorate your house, clean your house, all in honor of Shabbos. And it's actually interesting. There's a Talmud which says that a person who's dressed in Shabbos clothes is a different human being than a person who's dressed not in Shabbos clothes. Right? So it's actually a very important thing to have clothes which you wear just for Shabbos. Now, in the book, I just want to tell you something which this siddur, which I recommend you guys get. It's Art Scroll siddur. It's an English and Hebrew one. You may have one. If you don't, I do recommend that you get one. We will be using this quite a bit throughout our lessons. Now, on page 356 and 57, there's a special prayer which we say on the eve of Shabbos. People say it at different times. And I'll just translate it. I'll say it in Hebrew and I'll translate it for you. So we say, Anna Melech
Rabbi, you froze a little bit there.
Frozen? Okay. Just tell me when I'm back. Can you hear me? Good. All right. So the prayer goes like this: "It's Ana Melech Malchei Amlachim." So it's a please, King of Kings. Savela Malachecho, command your angels. Malachei Asheres, the ministering angels. Mesharse Elyon, who guard from on high. Sheifkeduni berachamim, that they look upon me with mercy. Bevarechuni, and they bless me. Bevayam lebeisi b'yom kadsheni, when they come into my home on a holy day. He adlakti neiroisai, because I've lit my candle. Veitzati mitasi, and I've made my bed. Veichlafti simloisai, and I've changed my clothes. Lichvoid Shabbos, in honor of Shabbos. And that's something which we say to Hashem, right? Hashem, I've done everything I can from my side to prepare for Shabbos. Can you please, in that same way, can you bless me and give me the holiness which I'm anticipating from this day of Shabbos? Now, just to go through some of the liturgy, which the prayers which we say on a Friday night, the Shabbos comes in. So Shabbos comes in. We start with the prayer called L'chuna Ranana, and you'll find that in the siddur. Right, it's also right over there. You can have a look. It's a part of what's the section called Kabbalah Shabbos, and that's on begins on this particular article siddur. It begins on page 308 and 309 in English, and it's L'chuna Ranana, come let us sing in front of Hashem. And it's a very important concept, and that is that singing and dancing brings a person to happiness. Right? And if you accept Shabbos with happiness, right, then your whole Shabbos will feel different. Right? And that's a very important thing, is to take in Shabbos with song and dance, with happiness and to sing. Now, one of the most famous prayers, or if we say on the eve of Shabbos, you may have heard of it, and if you go to a synagogue, you'll hear that it's a universal custom by all Jews from all different walks of life, and that's the prayer of Lecha Daidi. Right? You may have heard this, right? Lecha Daidi Likras Kala, which is, we say, come, my beloved, and let us welcome the bride. Now, this was actually written by someone called Rav Shlomo Alkabetz. And Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, right, lived between the years 1505 and I think 1585. And in around 1535, he moved just after the Spanish Inquisition. So he moved from Spain and then to Greece, and he learned under a rabbi who was a very big Kabbalist. His name was Rabbi Tatanik, and he learned Kabbalah, right, the mysticism of Judaism, and he became a very, very big Kabbalist. Some of his students later on included, and he moved to Safat, that he later on had some very famous students, one of them being Rav Yosef Kara, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, right, in the late 1500s. So he had some very, very great students, and he was known to be a very, very big Kabbalist. Now, the words of Lecha Daidi, right, spell out his name, right? The stanzas go with the Shin, right, Shlomo. It's Shin Lamed Mem Hey, which spells out the Shlomo. And his surname, right, Alkabetz, right, is right, Shlomo Halevi was his name. Rav Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz. And the stanzas of the Lecha Daidi are spelled out in his name. Now, he originally wrote this as a poem for his wife, right? And he gave it as a wedding gift. And it was very soon after he made it, it was published, right? And it was sung all around the world. And today it's sung in every shul, in every place. That it's one of the few poems and liturgies which are universally accepted by Jews from all backgrounds and all walks of life. And it's lasted. This poem, you could say, still in use today, 500 years later. It's still an integral part of our praise on Shabbos. And it's a discussion of us talking to Hashem and saying to Hashem, let us welcome Shabbos together. Let us welcome the Shabbos bride. And we sing this, and it starts off speaking about the importance of Shabbos and the holiness of Shabbos, and it ends off with stanzas which talk about the coming of Mashiach, and of how we're waiting for you, Hashem, to build the Beis HaMikdash once again, so that we can join and we can reunite with Hashem in the highest way possible, how Hashem intended, with the Beis HaMikdash rebuilt. Now, the last stanza, we say Boim B'Shalom, and we bow and we turn around to the back of the shul. We bow down and we turn around and we bow, and it's brought in a book called Taimei Minhagim, that when a person does that, when he bows down in that stanza, a person then receives an neshama yesera, an extra soul. Now on Shabbos, it's brought down that we receive an extra soul. Right? As we once discussed before, there are 5 different components of a human being. Right? There's the nefesh, the ruach, the neshama, the chaya, and the yechida. So the third aspect, called the neshama, a person gets a new part of him or her is attached on Shabbos, and a person gets this neshama yesera, an extra soul. And it's said to be that when a person bows and accepts Shabbos, that's when the soul comes in, and the soul stays with this person. She's Shabbos soul, and the Shabbos soul stays with the person throughout Shabbos, and will only depart when we make Havdalah. And that's part of the reason why when we smell spices afterwards, when we do the laws of Havdalah, we'll discuss how that helps to alleviate the loss of this extra soul. Now, because we have an extra soul, everything which we do on Shabbos is of a much higher and greater significance. Just as an example, it says that the learning of Torah, which we do on Shabbos, is 7 times more valuable and more powerful than the learning which we do during the week. So if a person, let's say, would learn 1 hour on Shabbos, that's the equivalent of learning for 7 hours. Okay, and so on. So it's a very, very important and special thing to be aware of, to know that we are being spiritually charged, and to fill our vessels and to have that. At the end of the story, and then I'll take some questions. So it's brought down the Chafetz Chaim. We once spoke about him before. So the Chafetz Chaim, he lived in a town of Radin, And in his town, everyone kept Shabbos. Right? It was like they were called a shtetl, small village, and in Radin, everyone kept Shabbos. It was a normal thing, right? No one would break Shabbos. And when the Chafetz Chaim moved to another area, right, the bigger city, right, so the first thing he noticed was that people on Shabbos, there were people who did observe Shabbos and people who didn't observe Shabbos. And the first Shabbos he saw that, he started crying. Right? He said, how can it be? Like, how come people have no sensitivity? How can they not be keeping Shabbos? And he was crying and crying throughout the whole Shabbos. He couldn't believe that that thumbs up again when you hear me. Are we back on? Okay. Good. So the Chafetz Chaim, right, was very, very sad, right? And eventually people told him, and they said, over here, remember, you're in a big city here, people work longer, they don't have the same mindset, they're more secular. Get used to it, this is how it is. And so he said, fine. He eventually calmed down and he got to that realization that, okay, not everybody keeps Shabbos. Now, the second Shabbos he was in the big city, right, he again saw people breaking Shabbos. And that Shabbos again, he started crying, right? And he was like, again, frantically crying and like, distraught, how can, and his students said to him, listen here, we explained to you last week, why are you crying again? That we told you last week. We live in a different place now, and people here are not so observant. They're more secular. They don't keep Shabbos. They don't have the same values as you. So he said, no, I'm not crying because I saw them not desecrating the Shabbos. I'm crying because I don't feel the same sensitivity as I did last week. Last week, it really bothered me when I saw that people weren't keeping Shabbos. This week, right, I was used to it, and I realized that now that I'm desensitized, right, I've lost a certain part of myself, that I no longer feel that same value of the holiness of Shabbos, where I can even accept that it can be that people can desecrate Shabbos. So just something to keep in mind, that it's all about, the main thing of preparing ourselves for Shabbos is to sensitize ourselves and to build within ourselves a receptacle where we can receive that sensitivity, and not to look at the outside container, but to remember that it's all about what's inside. Right? And that's essentially what Shabbos is about. It's a time to hollow out ourselves and to make room within ourselves to receive Hashem and to receive specialness and holiness. And the more that you open up and the more you make yourself into a container, right, the greater of that Shabbos energy you'll feel. So guys, if you want to unmute yourself, if you have any questions, happy to take them.
Yep, feel free, guys. Raise your hands. I'll be looking through the screen to see who's raising their hands to ask questions as well, to keep the people going. Anyone?
Any questions?
Aryeh, no questions? No?
Okay.
Bracha, any questions? Processing it? Dwayne, any questions? You look frozen there, buddy. He's smiling. Okay, good. Avichai, any questions? No? Marley, any questions? No one's got questions?
No one could.
You kidding me?
Because he was doing such a good job teaching, there's
Nothing to ask. It's just obvious.
All right. It's great. Marlena, you have any questions? Internet?
No, everything was pretty straightforward today. Thank you.
Okay. So
Okay,
guys,
great.
so what we're going to be doing, just to give you a heads up, the coming weeks we're going to be getting into more of the technical stuff. So those who have the book will be able to follow along. And we're going to dive into some of the practical laws. And I want to try and give you the skill set to be able to manage situations on your own without even having to ask questions. It's really the ideal where I like to take people, to be able to be familiar enough with the basic concepts of the laws so that you're able to deal with the situations as they arise. So that's coming up. All right, guys. So if there's no questions,
Thanks, guys.
thanks for coming.
And welcome the new member in
Thank
our
you.
group as well. So she'll be hopefully coming to join us soon as well, too. And some other people, hopefully. So if you guys know people that want to join and want to learn, just pass them my WhatsApp number and I'll speak with them. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Susie, for
Thank
bringing.
you.
Thanks, guys. Have a
Thank
Have a
great
good
week.
week.
Thank you,
Share
Rabbi.
with us.
Thank you,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
Yes. Bye.